I'm Leon Thomas, and this is Renegade Cut. Today's topic? Writer, director, and producer George Lucas has been responsible for some of the greatest motion pictures of all time, and some of the worst. Chiefest of Lucas's transgressions in the eyes of Star Wars fans are his re-releases of the original trilogy and the abysmal prequel trilogy. For the former, in addition to making harmless visual tweaks, he altered enough that some of the spirit of the characters disappeared. In the case of the prequels, Lucas tried to do too much, taking on the role of director, producer, writer, and special effects king. Lucas needs an editor to turn his amazing ideas into reality and discard his sillier notions. Yet even with these bad movies and bad edits in mind, why must George Lucas be so universally derided? His career from the mid-90s until today has been creatively bankrupt, yes, but he still had a hand in making some incredible motion pictures prior to that. Though for every one positive comment about Lucas on the internet, there seems to be 10 negative comments. Considering his filmography, shouldn't it be about 50-50? Have we adopted a shallow, "what have you done for me lately" mentality? Also, why must the attacks on Lucas be based in morality? He didn't personally attack anyone. He made some bad movies. That is not immoral, it's just unfortunate and sad. It's a matter of quality, not morality. One matter should be clear, and because of this must be stated aloud rather than hope this is all interpreted the right way. The purpose of this episode is not to make any claims that George Lucas is a consistently good filmmaker, or that he is a saint. Rather, the goal is only to show, with the bar set quite low here, that he is not always incompetent, and that he is not the devil. The most confusing method in which critics lambast George Lucas these days is by claiming that he was never a particularly good filmmaker in the first place, as if the prequel trilogy somehow exposed this as a fact, tearing away everything good he ever did in some form of retroactive false criticism. Lucas wrote and directed a bunch of strong, gripping pictures, and not just the first Star Wars. THX 1138, his first feature-length film, was released in 1971. It is a consummate example of dystopian science fiction, further exemplified by such 70s pictures as Logan's Run and Rollerball. Lucas feared a world without emotion, without desire, without personal introspection. A world ruled by a tyrannical government. The last theme would translate into his other big sci-fi film, but that's getting too far ahead. It's difficult to deny the horrifying beauty of THX 1138. Yet those who wish to discredit Lucas claim that THX was only a strong picture because of the impeccable acting of Robert Duvall and Donald Pleasence. However, the story and direction were all Lucas. He did not just stumble onto the set one day and hope Duvall and company would act their way to greatness. The long camera shots, the focus on the all-seeing eye during the phone scenes, the stunning yet simple visuals, and the story itself, written by Lucas, all pull the entire movie together. It wasn't just the Robert Duvall show. Lucas made a great picture. It's widely applauded by critics and sci-fi fans alike. There are some detractors, and their dislike of the film itself is as valid as someone's love, but the idea that Lucas was not instrumental in the movie that he wrote and directed is foolishness, and an attempt to take away what little glory Lucas has left. American Graffiti, released in 1973, is Lucas's most critically beloved film if Rotten Tomatoes is to be believed. It's nearly unanimous. Co-written by Lucas and two others, but directed by Lucas alone, this really may be his opus, as much as we associate the man with the Star Wars franchise. It was nominated for 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Lucas, and Best Original Screenplay, also partly Lucas. It won Best Picture, Comedy or Musical at the Golden Globes. American Graffiti is the coming-of-age movie, and in addition to it being a mainstream success, it was also a deeply personal reflection for Lucas. The characters Kurt Henderson, John Milner, and Terry Fields represent different stages from his younger life. Kurt is the enlightened Lucas in college, Milner is Lucas when he was young and reckless, and Terry is Lucas even younger when he was just another put-upon nerd. Lucas had a brilliant idea. He gave American Graffiti an almost documentary look to it in the way it was filmed, including the type of camera used. This allowed the audience to better connect to the characters. They felt real. The movie was so honest, so genuine. If Lucas retired after filming American Graffiti, he would still have a special place in Hollywood history. And regardless of what anyone else says, it still feels relevant today. American Graffiti cannot be taken away from Lucas, no matter how many mistakes he made later in his career. And then there was Star Wars, the original blockbuster, the film Lucas is most known for. One way that those who hate Lucas try to diminish his influence on the first Star Wars is by saying that its plot is the simplest of the 3 movies in the original trilogy. That may be accurate, but isn't that also true of most trilogies? The first one sets everything up, the second movie pushes things further, and the third reaches the big climax. Further, the creation of the story was not simple at all. Star Wars contains homages to Akira Kurosawa and was influenced by the pinnacle of comparative mythology treatises, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. There is more to Star Wars than laser swords and space explosions. It is not morally wrong to make movie mistakes. So why do we toss moral accusations at Lucas like, "George Lucas raped my childhood"? He did nothing of the sort, he just made some bad movies and bad decisions towards the end of his career. It's something worth being very disappointed about, but it's not something worth hating a man. Maybe the idea of George Lucas wringing his hands and twirling his mustache like a 1910 silent film villain has become so prevalent because many Star Wars fans have grown to hate Lucas so much that it is easier to believe that Lucas hates the fans as well. Although he has upset his fans, the idea that it was intentional or that he invites our scorn is ludicrous. We, as fans, can dislike his films as we please, but the amount of false, righteous indignation, hyperbole, and moral aggrandizing about something that is not a moral issue has no real place in our discussion of the man. He's just a filmmaker with a hit-and-miss record, like many before him. He made some bad films like The Phantom Menace, and some good films like the original Star Wars. He had some bad ideas like Howard the Duck, and some good ideas like inventing Indiana Jones. Lucas conceived of Indiana Jones and got Steven Spielberg to direct Raiders of the Lost Ark. Without Lucas, we wouldn't have Star Wars or Indiana Jones, quite possibly the 2 greatest adventure movie franchises ever. Despite all the other low-quality things he has been party to, don't his contributions to film earn him just a little bit of our respect? George Lucas made a series of bad decisions in the second half of his career, but that doesn't make him a monster. He just wrote some bad stories and got lazy in the director's chair. Okay, very, very bad stories, and very, very lazy, that must be admitted. Even so, these mistakes should not tarnish the great contributions to the industry he made in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. And they should certainly not have us all pretend that he hates his fans. The hate only seems to go one way. It's too easy to see a man who damaged the credibility of his own product as a villain. It's a very black and white view, coincidentally akin to his own dark versus light Star Wars movies. However, if we are to take a step back and think about things realistically, George Lucas's filmography and career is something his science fiction universe doesn't have. A shade of gray.